Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Hames, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Digital and Social Strategy at 3 Enrollment Marketing. Thanks for joining us on our LinkedIn Live. I'm really excited to be joined today by DJ. DJ has attended the Institute, and he's going to talk a lot about the Institute. But first, DJ, can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure thing. First and foremost, Matt, it's a pleasure to join you today. Thank you for having me on live. And so I'll transition into the introduction. As Matt alluded, I'm DJ Menifee. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm blessed to serve as the Vice President for Enrollment at Susquehanna University. I'm on the tail end of getting to year three, but I've been in higher education, specific to college admission and enrollment for 15 years. And the other piece I wanted to share within my introduction, Matt, is based on my Gallup strengths. My top 10 are made up of strategy and execution. And so I felt right at home in my first experience at the Institute because it was primarily focused on things that are a part of my strong suits. And so thinking critically about building strategy, not only individually, but collaboratively with peers across an institution, and then actually implementing and executing that plan that you put in place. And so that's what I thought I'd share in my introduction today.
That's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Before we get into the actual institute, though, we're heavily in an enrollment cycle. Your school has admitted a bunch of people. So tell us a little bit about your school and why should a student attend your school?
Sure. Well, first, for those that are tapping in live, I'm biased. Okay, we can get that out the way.
Of
So
course.
we already recognize that. But Susquehanna University is a private liberal arts institution in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We have roughly 22 to 2,300 undergraduate students, and we are an institution that is invested in focus in cultivating intellectual grounding, active learning, and preparing global citizens. We are providing a transformative education together with an intimate and nurturing campus community. And we want to empower graduates to go on to have a successful, meaningful, and global impact on not only their small community, but those that are around them. We're recognized for being an engaging community, being invested in our students and their long term return on investment, as well as for social mobility. And so we're seeking students who have an interest in wanting to be a part of a culture that helps build their resilience, that helps nurture their confidence, that deepens their focus, and again prepares them for a global society. We have a variety of academic programs, some that we would deem in the signature category that we are well known for. But in the end, we are truly trying to develop students academically, mentally, socially, to go on and have an impact in their communities.
That's great. I always enjoy listening to enrollment professionals talk about their school, the passion and the way that they just talk about it. It's really interesting. So thank you for doing that. Also, I should tell you that I have a high school junior, so we are knee deep in looking at universities and colleges, and she's writing out her lists. And so I always like to hear from people why my daughter should attend. Anyway, um, since we're still talking about you before we get to the Institute, you have a podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your podcast is about and how people can listen?
Fantastic. So, uh, my wife and I, for a long time, I also call her the queen. So, if I refer to the queen later on this live session, that is who I'm referring to. Uh, we've talked a lot about things that we had passion for and things that we had an interest in doing, but we hadn't quite tried. And so we've talked about my passion for leadership and wanting to have leadership conversations in a podcast format for a while. And so in November, when we were just in a deep conversation, we just challenged ourselves to say, why not us and why not now? And so
Yeah,
that was kind of the birth of the Hues of Leadership podcast, which can be found on Apple as well as Spotify. And really, the framework in the first season, Matt, is identifying and connecting with leaders that have had a huge impact on my leadership lens and philosophy in my first 15 years of my career. And within that, having them speak to three what we're calling hues of leadership. And within that, not only unpacking what that hue is for our audience, but also kind of sharing what that looks like through their lens. And it allows for a back and forth dialogue, often which leads to opportunities of showing um, resilience, being humble, pulling the defensive guard down, and being willing to show areas of opportunity for growth. And so it's been a fun journey thus far.
That's
Actually,
awesome.
we are in position to launch episode 6 sometime this week. And our first season will have 15 episodes. And so it's just been really fun to have the conversation. And then I go back and listen to the episodes as if I wasn't a
Yeah.
part of them because I felt like I'm still learning and gleaning things from those that have helped shape my career and the shape where I am today in my career.
It's definitely worth your time to download it. It's really an interesting podcast. So thank you for doing that. And speaking of leadership, you're the track leader. You're a track leader this year for the enrollment track, the chief enrollment officer track at the Institute for Higher Education. So before we get into this year's Institute for Higher Education, can you tell us a little bit about your experience at the previous institute? Now, I know you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, so tell us a little bit more about your overall experience at the institute.
Sure, sure. The 500-foot view or the 1,000-foot view lens, Matt, that stood out to me most was it was an experience that was focused on strategy, and then it allowed time to have multiple conversations in a relaxed setting with your mentor, right? And it
Yeah,
also gave you time within the context of the institute to reflect on what you were learning, to put time to pen and paper to reflect on, okay, well, what does this mean? How do we build this? And so I actually pulled my notes for our conversation today, just so I can show our audience that I was really thinking deeply while we were there, and then going back and doodling and trying to think through, okay, what does this mean for where we are? What does this mean for the plan we already have in place? What does this mean for the next iteration of a plan, so that we can, again, be a part of the future proofing of the institution? And then I think the other piece that I remember thinking about during the whole time is why didn't I invite my enrollment leadership team? They didn't have to
yeah,
be. They don't have to go, but there was so much content that only one person can't gather that, and they bring so many different things to the table. They look through a variety of different lenses, and so why wouldn't I want them there, pulling information, being a sponge, but then altering it through their lens and helping move our institution forward? When I think about some of the key concepts from last summer, I wrote them down because I wanted to make sure I shared them because they really were impactful for me in the experience. So I remember the content on enrollment being a partner to future proof the institution, the importance and the value of brand, as well as inconsistent messaging, thinking more critically about and contributing to conversations on academic mix. That was one that really stood out to me. And asking
yeah,
the question, do we have the right programs to attract great students? And how do we assess what may be good for us in collaboration with our academic partners to help move the institution forward in a very strong way? Um, what is our position in the market and how do we own it? Do we know what our identity is? And so those were some of the pieces that, again, really stood out. And then the other piece was just reflecting on conversations about where enrollment management has come, what it could be, what it should be, and how do we evolve as practitioners, given the way in which things are tracking. Our voice, our perspective, our divisions will
yeah.
continue to play a critical role in the future in the long term longevity of institutions. And so that's kind of where I saw a lot of the value. Again, I doodled in my notes. The last piece, Matt, that I want to share is I had a great, let me rephrase that. I have a great mentor who started to become a mentor for me at the Institute, Susan Dileno, over at St. Mary's in California. And I don't know that I could have expected anything more from our conversations. We met each day of the Institute. And she challenged me with inquiry. And what I mean by that is she kept asking further questions just to make sure she had the right context into what I was sharing or what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because of her experience in the space, she shared alternative perspectives and views. And she also provided recommendations of things for me to consider in the future. Different ways to approach conversation, different ways to approach collaboration, different ways to approach strategy. And so we've also stayed in connection with each other
That's
since that
awesome.
time. We've connected in the fall, we've connected in the spring. And so, that relationship has been meaningful to me. I'm mindful that that may not be the case for everyone, and everyone may not be seeking that. But as a person who aligns with lifelong learning and loves to be a sponge where I can be around people who can just give life to me in terms of their background and their experiences and alternative ways to look at this work. I just appreciate her time, her wisdom, and her expertise.
That's great. I mean, that was an excellent answer, DJ. I really appreciate that. I want to drill down on two things that you talked about. One is when you go to a normal conference, and this is not a conference, I want to be clear about that. But when you go to a conference, it's usually jam packed from all the way, and then you finish at 5 o'clock, and your brain is full of ideas, but there's no way to really just to let them sink in and to let them sit. So the agenda at the Institute for Higher Education is designed specifically to give you that chance to reflect, to give you that chance to doodle, to give you that chance to meet with your mentor. So if you look at the agenda at institutehe.org, you'll see that we go from 8 o'clock until around lunchtime pretty hard, but then we give an opportunity, as DJ said, to doodle, to get your thoughts together, to meet with your mentor, to talk over this stuff. And then we come back in the evening together for beachside chats to kind of talk amongst ourselves about what we learned that day and what we want to do. So what he's saying, and I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, DJ, but what you're saying is that that afternoon was vital for you in just kind of letting it all sink in.
Correct. I mean, it was. I think the first day I met with lunch with Susan. So that was our first
Yeah.
mentor mentee interaction. And even after that, and I think we went over by 30 or 45 minutes, over an hour. And so
Yeah.
still had so much time. And so I kind of went back and I'm like, all right, let me think through what we talked about today. How does that align with where we are as an institution? How does it align with the vision that I've had as an EM leader who is still growing and developing every day? And how do I share some of these ideas and the things that we've learned with my colleagues upon my return? And so that first day kind of really helped me set the tone for the remaining part. And obviously, I think it would be a shame not to recognize that the Institute does a great job of where you host the Institute.
Yeah.
And that also provides opportunity for, people bringing their loved ones. There are opportunities for people to just engage and enjoy their time there. So you can dive in, you can unpack, and so to speak, you can let your hair down all in the same time during the time of the experience.
Yeah, that's great. So it's in Clearwater Beach, Florida. It's June 4th to 8th. You can find out more details at institutehe.org. I also want to go back to something that you said a little bit earlier too about bringing your team. So this year the institute has expanded. There's a marketing track. I'm the chair of the marketing track, um, and so we I, this is a personal plug, obviously, but I think this is an opportunity for marketing people to come and have sessions in the morning and then meet with the VPs of enrollment in the afternoon and just chat about what they both their own both doodling, their own just kind of noodling what happened that day. So you had said that you wish you brought your senior leadership team. The way that the Institute for Higher Education is moving is that we're trying to expand it to also the marketing team. So you don't have to comment on this, but it's a personal plug. But what do you think about bringing marketing people to the Institute as well?
Yeah, well, what I would say, just as a point of clarification, what I referenced was my enrollment leadership team, which is my AVP of admission, my AVP of student
Yep.
financial services, and our director of admission communication, which does the majority of what I would deem our enrollment marketing, while we do
Yeah.
have partners in our central marketing and communications team. And so what I meant was is thinking through who is going to spend the most time really trying to give life, give a pulse
Right.
to the strategic enrollment plan that we had built. And who is going to be in what I would deem the war room every Wednesday at 9 a.m. In my office, thinking through where are we, how are we tracking,
Yeah.
and that's not only in terms of the year. So thinking at the micro level, but also thinking and stepping back macro wise, how are we tracking in terms of this plan that we put? Are we on track? Do we need to pivot? We're really not trying to be one of those teams or institutions that are allowing our strategy, our plan to gather dust because it's sitting on the proverbial shelf. And so that is what I meant and who I was referring to. And I think the
Yep.
other piece that I want to share here is I just presented the opportunity. Our institution is very supportive of development from a professional development lens, and so being able to resource development and growth is a priority in what we do. But I also have experiences in my history where I thought everybody wanted to learn the way that I learned. Everybody wanted to
Yeah.
participate in the things that I wanted to participate in. And I realized in a previous environment that wasn't quite the case. And so I just presented the opportunity and said, hey, should you have an interest, here's what the
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
looks like. Here's what it will be. Here's what I would envision if our collective enrollment leadership team went. If you want to go, I'm signing off now. Let's do it. If not, it's okay. We'll still be able to bring information back. And so when in their own accord, they ask questions trying to make sure, okay, well, what track you think would be good for me? What time, when do you think we could do X, Y, or Z as a team while we're there? Okay, we're in. And so,
Nice.
while I'm mindful, we still have a few months away. I would be telling the story if I said I wasn't geeked about having everybody there. Um,
Yeah.
the thing that I remember about um, the marketing content, Matt, was it was just too big for me.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is
Yeah.
I feel like I've moved up along the journey in the continuum of a marketing practitioner, given its connection and direct impact on the work I do on enrollment. But there was so much content there that I think I felt like I needed additional minds to be there to help unpack all of the different content. And that's whether you're thinking about your messaging, how you're using social or digital tools, as well as some of the up and coming new technology that has emerged that you all were sharing there in
Yeah.
terms of metaverse. There's just so much content there that it's like, well, I don't want to be the only one looking at this, reflecting on this, and asking the question, does this make strategic sense for our institution?
Yeah, and to be fair, the when marketing people go to conferences, they are talking about a lot of this stuff. What's different about the institute is they're not talking about it in a siloed place. They're talking about it in the same place as the enrollment professionals, and that opportunity to talk with an enrollment professional and sit in with the mentor even. So I want to transition to a little bit more about mentorship because we talk about mentorship, and you've eloquently talked about your mentorship with Susan. Um, this will be the first time that you're an actual mentor at the institute. So, if you will, tell us a little bit about how mentorship, how you feel this transition is going to go for you, and how important is mentorship in enrollment?
Well, I think in terms of growth and trajectory, and when I'm saying growth and trajectory, it's not just growing vertically. You don't have to attend this and you want to become a VP. Everybody doesn't want to be a VP or a dean, and I think
Yep.
that's okay. But it also means that you can still grow horizontally. You can still grow and be the best version of yourself in the role that you have or in the role that you feel that you're called
It's a
to
great
have.
point.
And so, as I think about those things, I feel like that is a great space for colleagues or mentors in this space. And I think sometimes we can get too fixated on the term between mentee and mentor. For me, it's just a growing relationship. Both parties can
Yeah.
feed each other, both parties can nurture each other, both parties can learn from one another. I don't intend to step into this blessing of serving as a mentor at this institute and think for a second that that doesn't mean I won't be able to learn anything from the people that I'm going
Right.
to be having
Right.
conversations with. And so I think those are some of the key aspects that I think about. I think the other piece is the intentionality of it. If you intend to grow, you intend to develop, and you intend to reach out and seek support and guidance from those that have laid the foundation
Yeah.
before you, or even are walking beside you, but they just have different ways of thinking. They are wired differently. They have different strengths. There's so much that we can learn all the way around us. And so I think when I think of mentoring and I think of the value of it, I think of this constant way of growth and learning without having to sit in an academic classroom, without having to attend an official webinar. That you just have somebody you can have a back and forth dialogue with, You can come prepared. You can have some questions. You can have some concerns. You can have some thought bubbles or ideas. And it's
Yeah.
just an opportunity to kind of go back and forth and have that dialogue. And it's been meaningful in my growth in my career. And when the opportunity has presented itself, when I can see someone that's under my guidance and care that they may benefit from something like that, again, I've gotten better at recommending versus just saying, "Hey, I'm going to match you with someone." It's like,
Right.
"Hey, I know this person and this was a while ago, but I know somebody over at Creighton that has a strong skill set in Slate and CRM and marketing. Would you mind me connecting you to? Maybe there's
Yeah.
some lessons that they can give you, given you all kind of see the world a little differently than I do. Hey, let's try that. Let's see what happens in terms of that relationship." Lastly, what I would say, Matt, is as I think about transitioning into the institute, the one thing I want to do is attempt to model what I've seen from Susan. But
Yeah.
I would also say I latched on and created another mentor, even though he didn't know it was coming, and that was Chris Ferguson.
Oh
I've
yeah.
also stayed in contact with Chris Ferguson since the Institute. We've even presented together at a different conference on strategic planning. And so when I think about what they have meant to me, I want to be open. I want my mind to be open. I want to lead with inquiry. I want to provide a lens and alternative perspective. I don't want to cast judgment. And I also don't want to present as if because I'm serving in this mentor capacity that I'm more of an expert than they are, that I know more than they do, and that I'm in an
Right.
alternative or higher position than they are. I never know, that might be somebody that I might be working for one day as we
Yeah.
grow in the profession, or vice versa. And so, I just want to lead with inquiry. I want to make sure I'm giving my energy and time for what they care about, how they want to develop, and how can I best support them in their institution and moving forward.
Well, that's great. I just recently actually had a conversation with Chris Ferguson about the Institute, and he's one of the co founders of the Institute. And he talked about the intentionality of mentorship and how important that is. And I want to be clear on that. At the Institute for the Emerging Enrollment track, the mentorship is an intentional thing. It's not an informal, just go find somebody. It's an intentional, you are assigned a mentor. And, and so it's up to you as the individual to take advantage of that in whatever level you want to. But as you also said, DJ, is an opportunity to meet with a bunch of different people and to find those informal mentors who you can just ask questions with. Like that's the goal of the Institute, to bring together people from enrollment and help each other learn together and advance our industry together. So, no, that's my opinion about why people should attend. If you were going to just say to somebody, what one thing or what reason should they attend the institute? What do you think that is? How do you sum it up?
Well, I think there's a couple of different things that I think of, and I intend to lead through inquiry, right? So,
Yeah.
do you have a strategic plan? That's an institution level. Do you have a strategic enrollment plan that aligns with your institution's plan? Do you have a vision for how your institution will navigate the headwinds that will come our way over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Those are initial reasons when I think through the strategy lens, right? Um, how are you doing in the space of marketing and communications? Um, can a prospective student in the audience you're attracting or intending to attract, can they see who you are as an institution? Do they know what your character is? Do they know what you value? Can they differentiate you and who you are as an institution's personality versus the other gazillion schools that they're going to be considering?
Yeah.
Are you up to date with the trends that are forthcoming within this space? Not only in terms of how you market and position an institution, but also in terms of the other competitors that may not be your traditional competitor set. And so, as I'm leading with all those questions, if any of those things are piquing somebody in the audience's interest, those would be reasons why I would say, at minimum, further look into the institute. Reach
Yeah.
out to folks that have attended, reach out to folks that have served as mentors or faculty in the experience, to truly think through, okay, would this make sense for me? And I've been blessed to connect with a few folks via LinkedIn. He's like, hey, I've seen that you're going to be a track leader. Tell me a little bit more about the experience. Why would you think
Nice.
this would be a good experience for me? And I also have somebody who um, I would say we've learned from each other. We've been sponges to each other, and I won't say his name on live because I didn't get his approval first. But he's been wanting to go to the institute, and he will be at the institute this year. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he gives in, as far as contribution to others for their growth, but also how he continues to grow in the profession as well.
Nice. Well, now when anybody asks you why they should attend the institute, you can send them a link to this video because you've given a really eloquent description as to why somebody should attend the institute, and I really appreciate that. Um, I also really appreciate your time. I know it's a really busy time. It was a I'm so glad that you came on here to have a chat with us about your experiences at the institute. Um, if anybody is interested in joining and taking a look at the agenda, again, the URL is institutehe.org. That's Institute Higher Ed, he.org. And you can take a look at the 5 tracks. You can take a look at the agenda, take a look at the location, Clearwater Beach, June 4th to 8th. It's really going to be a transformative experience for people who come. And the more people that you engage with and interact with, the more transformative it will be. So that's basically what we talked about today, how it can be transformative with mentorship and collaboration. So DJ, I really appreciate your time. I know, like I said, it's really busy. So thank you for doing this LinkedIn Live with me.
No problem. It was a pleasure, Matt. And I look forward to seeing you, the 3E team, and the rest of our colleagues at the Institute over the summer. The last piece I would say to the audience is you get out of it what you put into it. It's one
Yeah.
thing to have an amazing structure with amazing content, with amazing faculty or speakers. It's another thing to come prepared and come ready to engage and to come ready to take things back to help your institution or your organization move forward.
Well, that's a great way to end it. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.